For the past 3 years, I've been using the Power Cranks. I've been a 100-meter sprinter for the last 17 years, been on 11 U.S. national teams. First year I used the cranks, I set the age group record for 38-year-olds in 100 meters at a time of 10.34, so not bad for an old man. When you're getting up to the elite levels of sprinting, and even just at the entry levels, you want to have proper mechanics. And sometimes it's hard to communicate how you want that done to an athlete. And the Power Cranks is a good way to get the athlete doing that motion that you're trying to get, and for them to have that feel, to feel what they're supposed to do. And it also starts to put the things that you want in the muscle memory of the athlete. So even if an athlete doesn't totally get it when you explain it, you can put them on the Power Cranks, their body will go through it, and they'll start to adapt, and they'll be able to remember the pattern that you're actually trying to teach. So it's a good tool.
And that pattern you're trying to teach is?
Well, basically in sprinting and in running, you're talking about a rotational cycling of your sprint mechanics, where the foot actually comes up and around over the calf or over the knee, strikes down right underneath the center of gravity, or approximately a few inches in front of that. And with the Power Crank, you're allowed to do that, whereas on a regular bike, you really can't mimic that mechanic that well. We're getting the neurological patterning in there that really is key, because in sprinting, only one part of it is how much force you're applying to the ground. Really, when you're talking about your elite level sprinters and your average athlete or your average sprinter, or even just runner in general, the better athletes or the quicker athletes tend to be able to produce a lot more force into the ground with the shortest amount of ground time. So actually your efforts are not necessarily to just push into the ground, but actually get off of the ground. And with the Power Crank, you instantly get the feedback as to whether or not you're stalling on the ground or if you're coming up, which is what we would desire. The range of my clientele will go anywhere from a 10-year-old up to a professional athlete, but I generally put most athletes on it because, again, of its teaching component, but also of its conditioning components, because, again, this apparatus or these cranks allow you to strengthen the hip flexors, activate the glutes, the hamstrings, the soleus, all of the lower foot. So you integrate everything into the training action instead of just trying to, when you do drills, they're pretty much one-dimensional. You're maybe hitting one muscle group, two muscle groups. This integrates all of them, plus it works on the coordination of all those muscle groups working together.
If you were to describe to another runner the changes you see in the stride, how would you describe that?
And generally what will happen is you have less of what we call in track and field excess back kick, where the foot really reaches out and swings behind the body. You'll get a better form of striking the ground, coming right back up underneath the buttocks and stepping over. So you'll see more of a better front mechanics, where the foot cycles up and in front of the body, and decreased back mechanics, which is really where a lot of athletes have their problems in terms of speed. It's too much back kick.
Let's take a real-world look at what Aaron is talking about. Here we will compare two runners, one an Olympic medalist marathoner and the other a professional multi-sport athlete. Both are above average runners, but one is much better than the other. For illustration purposes, I've slowed both runners down such that one stride takes the same amount of time in both. Note what the better runner does differently. 1. He spends less time on the ground, getting his foot off the ground quicker. 2. He gets his foot moving forward quicker. 3. He actively contracts his hamstring muscles to get his foot higher to shorten the lever arm, making it easier for him to swing his leg forward. 4. As his leg comes forward, it barely passes vertical, avoiding overstriding. And 5. His foot strikes the ground closer under his center of gravity, which will cause less braking forces. All of these differences allow for faster, more efficient leg turnover and will allow any runner to run faster for the same effort and degree of training. Let's take another look at this time from the perspective comparing the Olympic marathoner to cycling, and specifically Power Crank cycling. The problem with regular cycling is the typical coordination has almost nothing to do with running. The leg can be pushed up passively on the backstroke and the quads pushed down forcefully on the downstroke. This is represented here by the red arrow. With power cranking, however, the forces must be more tangential along the pedaling circle. The foot must be lifted up on the backstroke, pushed across the top, brought down, and then again pushed across the bottom of the circle. This coordination is represented by the black arrow. Now we can compare and contrast the similarities and differences between running and power cranking. First, immediately after push-off, the foot is beginning to be slowed in its backward motion in the power cranker, such that by the time it is halfway up the backstroke, it is moving forward. Notice also that even though the foot is not as far back as seen with the runner, the knee joint is almost identically flexed for this point in the cycle. While this does not simulate the foot's motion exactly, it recreates the muscle contractions necessary to prevent excessive back kick. Next, power cranks help prevent overstriding because they encourage the coordination that prevents the lower leg from going past vertical. There is absolutely no benefit to the runner in bringing the lower leg past vertical, and power cranks reinforce that. Then next, the leg is in almost perfect position to hit the ground just in front of the center of gravity at its low point.
The power cranks for us are a great way to reproduce and replicate the mechanics of running without the impact on the joints. You've got everything from the dorsiflexion in the ankle to the hip flexion, as well as the hip extension on the contralateral side. And because of the uniqueness of the power cranks and their independent function of one another, it recreates running, the running gait, better than anything that we've ever used in the past.
In 2003, the Duke women finished 23rd in the NC2A championships for cross country. Then they got power cranks. In 2004, they finished second. And in 2005, they were ranked number 1 almost the entire season. And in the ACC championship, scored a record 20 points and had 7 runners in the top 11.
Running, I saw PRs in my 5K distance within 3 or 4 weeks.
I usually do this test set for my running. It's about 4 by a mile, so I see how fast I can do my mile repeats, and normally they're about 5:20, 5 minutes and 20 seconds per mile. Then I got out to the spring, February, March. I got out, did a couple of running sessions and intervals over the winter. Got out running in the spring, and I went 5:15, 5:10, 5:05. And 4:58, and I was like, wow, where'd that come from? Because I'd hardly run at all. I've been doing his power cranks work on the trainer, and I was pretty impressed.
In 2006, Coach Joe Vigil and Team USA California started using power cranks. Needless to say, we're very excited to know that America's top distance runners are now training with power cranks. And man, we can hardly wait until 2008 in Beijing.
I used to run like 3:15 marathons, and which was the hardest I could. I get the power cranks, and I do my first marathon in under 3 hours with no soreness.
Got the power cranks about 4 months before the New York City Marathon. I rode them, I'd say, twice a week, and then ran like 3 or 4 times a week. Did the New York City Marathon 10 times, I PR'd.
First year I used the cranks. I set the age group record for 38-year-olds in 100 meters at a time of 10.34, so not bad for an old man.
The so-called fastest man in the NFL, Joey Galloway, has had an injury-prone NFL career. Then in 2004 off-season, he got a power cranks exercycle. And in 2005, he stayed injury-free and set several personal records. So, whatever your running need or sport, power cranks can make you faster, a lot faster.